Well, I'm delighted to welcome my guest today, Stuart Ashing. And what I can see on the screen here is the flying hypnotist. Stuart, welcome.
Hello. Thanks, Bill. We've talked for quite a long time before we came to the interview, but
Yeah, I think the flying hypnotist will give you a clue about some of the things that we're going to talk about today. It's going to be fascinating. But Stuart, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are your roots, Stuart?
well, when I first heard your voice, I thought you're not that far from my origins. I was brought up in southeast Northumberland,
Right.
sort of, where there's lots of, you could walk half a mile in any direction out of the town called Stakeford, where I was brought up. It's a little,
Right.
one of those new Milton Keynes type estates where lots of little
Right. Yeah.
semi-detached houses and garages, and everyone's got their little plot of grass, and
Uh-huh.
everybody's on the up.
Right.
And then
So
across the river,
was that a new town then, Stuart? Yeah.
well, most of it, yeah. I mean, most of it was built sort of at the beginning of the 1960s.
Right.
Leech's Estate, they called it. There was a big builder around the north of England building Leech's Estate. You could go
Right.
anywhere in the north of England and you'd see these estates, very identical, semi-detached houses, garage, bit of garden for, up and coming people.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
So you were up and coming in those days then, Stuart, yeah?
Well, my
And then
family were, I hadn't a clue. I was just
you just went along with it.
I was just wandering around, running through the fields and occasionally being told to go to school and then occasionally not,
Right.
and things. But just across the river from there and down the bank to the river, the other side, there's a place called Ashington, which was the largest mining village at the time in Europe, of about 30,000 people, mainly miners, coal miners.
Right.
And a lot of my parents' families were involved in the mines.
Right.
So,
As in these areas, I guess it was probably one of the major employers, in the 50s and the 60s.
yeah, at the
Mining,
turn of
yeah.
the century, 1910, it was one farmhouse.
Right. Yeah.
And then they found coal, and then people came in from Wales and all over the country, other mining areas, people coming
Right.
in or people just getting into mining. So yeah, there was a lot of different cultures came into play. People coming in from the farming land, which is the other side of my family,
Right.
were farmers.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, as I said, the kind of Milton Keynes, for those that aren't from the UK, Milton Keynes is famous in the UK as just being this big concrete estate flung
Yeah.
in the middle of a piece of farming land.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, there was lots of kind of semi-professional, professional people, middle management,
Right.
all of
Right.
that there. So my parents were taking that step out from the mining background and the farming background into sales. We had our own chemist shop. Well, my mother ran a chemist shop for 10 years.
Right.
Every estate had its little string of shops, with about
Indeed.
6 to 8 shops, a grocery shop, a chemist in the
And
middle. We had a
and
chemist.
and I do hope there was a pub there as well, no?
There was on the edge of the estate. Funnily enough, there wasn't one in the middle of the estate. They forgot that bit.
Stuart, I'm going to jump a little bit and talk about your coming to Spain. Then we'll go back and talk about what you were doing in the UK. How long have you been here in Andalusia, in the south of Spain?
Okay. We moved, well, my family, my wife, 2 children, and Sandy, my wife's son, who was about
Right.
20 at the time. We moved across in August the 5th, I remember it well, 2005. So we've been
Right.
here, what's that, 18 years?
18 years.
And people go, you got to be mad moving to Spain. What, you're just selling everything up?
Yeah, I think a few of us that have made that kind of move had the same reaction, Stuart. It's like, what the hell are you doing,
but given as we go further into my other experiences in life and things, I just said to them it would be mad not to.
Right. Yeah.
In my way of looking at things, to bring my family up in the way the UK has developed over time. I thought I don't want. I'd prefer it if my children grew up in a culture and society where there's some structure to the society.
Right.
Where if you're in a village and a granddad said to a young kid playing in the street, "Stop what you're doing. It's wrong."
Yeah.
They listen. They don't turn around and go, "Who the F are you?"
Yeah. Yeah. That certainly, society in Spain is changing as well, but I guess that's happening
Yeah,
all over the world.
in the inner city areas in Malaga, I have seen elements of that, and even in our town, there are what they call the gypsy quarters,
Right.
which are
Yes.
historically people that live on the edges and outside the culture.
Sure.
Um, so there's always going to be a dodgy element in every town, but generally speaking, even now after 20 years, we could walk through town. They've got the traditional parades. They've got these boom firework things going off at ridiculous times in the morning on a Sunday, because my son actually took part in some of these religious parades, which is
Right.
unusual because he's English. He was one of the only English kid playing the drums in one of these Spanish parades, with
Right.
like
Okay.
almost pseudo military outfits on. And he'd be up at the crack of dawn as soon as he heard the boom firework go off from the church. It's time for the parade to get together. And then there was
Right.
another boom to let the town know the parade's about to start. And
Yeah.
you get the streets lined like in some of the mining towns. That's what I kind of like about it. In the 60s and 70s, the mining towns, that culture was when it was miners' picnic day,
Right.
everything stopped, everybody partied, and then there was marching bands, like pit bands. Every pit, every mine had a band. Like you see these Yorkshire movies where they've got Yorkshire brass bands and things, and they'd
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
these like marching bands coming down the street and everyone cheering, and then there'd be a judging competition. There'd be a
Yeah.
fairground rides. Not so much of a religious slant to it as there is here in Spain, because Spain,
Yeah.
uh, sort of almost Ku Klux Klan pointy hats and things
I
can look
know. I know.
scary to foreigners.
Yeah. But
Um,
this is, I think what you're describing is where you're living now, which is, well, it's not far inland, but it's far enough inland from the coast
it's
to
not
to
Little
to, to
Britain.
be very different, isn't it?
Yeah, they call it Little Britain down on the coast.
Yeah, I know. But that was was that where you moved to first of all? You moved
Yeah,
to the
we
coast, yeah?
decided, because the children were quite young, they were just turning 6 and 9,
Right.
the 2 boys, that I thought it would be only fair to them and to us to settle where we know there's English people about. And we put the children into a private school,
Right.
which was quite reasonable. In England, it would have cost us absolute fortune, but here it was quite reasonable. And it was around about 50-50 English and Spanish.
Right.
So that
Yeah.
gives them an introduction to making friends with Spanish people, visiting their houses, learning
Right.
Spanish.
Uh,
Um, but even before we moved over, we had a good drive around and explored from Malaga all the way along to Estepona. We spent about 4 days just driving up and down and in and around, and just seeing what was here, in terms of, because with my background with, we'll get into it, I know, later on, with my background with traveling all over the UK and Europe with my comedy hypnosis show, I've experienced the
mhm.
similarities in every town.
Sure. Sure.
I could find where the nearest pizza shop was in any town just by looking at the architecture.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I'd go, right, that's the Georgian house area of the town. That's the business center. There's that kind of nightclub vibe in that end.
Yeah.
That's where the pizza shop will be. So when we drove around, I could quickly spot what I didn't like, what I did like,
Sure.
where I like to like. And as soon as we drove through the town we live now, Alarin El Grande, we said that's where we want to live.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think for a lot of people, especially having been down here for a while and driven around, you know, it's a bit different. I think if you're over on holiday and just happen to land in a place, but you know, you've been around and you've experienced different things, and when you come upon the place that feels right, you know it, don't you?
I just saw it and just went, even if I can't speak the language at the moment, which my Spanish was very small from
Yeah.
some basic stuff we did at school, I just thought, yeah, this is a little white town. I can feel the culture there just
Yes.
by
Yeah.
looking at it.
Yeah.
There was a town a little bit further over, Coin, which is similar, but I was driving around that place just going, this just looks wrong. And
Yes.
then the other side, you've got Alarin de la Torre, which is a bit like the Milton Keynes I mentioned, you know, all the modern houses with the modern architecture and everything. And I do
Yeah.
love cult. I love good quality architecture or historic architecture. You know, the
Sure.
light fittings. Every light fitting in our town is like something out of an 1800s French movie. You know, like a
Yeah. Yeah.
1800s carriages and everything. And I just went, yeah, this is where I want to live.
Yeah. And it is a very different, how should I put it? I think a very different experience living inland. And so you don't really have to go very far inland from the costas for you to get into what I would call real Spain. And
I would call it that, real Spain.
yeah, and you know that because everything's cheaper.
Yeah,
It's,
we went
you
when
go
we
to
were
a restaurant
on
or
properties
anything.
inland. I don't know why, but they took us like 30 miles inland. We said we want to be handy for the schools on the coast, and they're showing us
Right.
properties 30 miles inland. I just going, well,
Yeah.
we get to see a little bit of Spain.
Uh-huh.
But we pulled into this cafe, and the coffee. I know it was 20 years ago, but even so, it was like 50 cents for
Yeah, yeah,
two
yeah.
coffees, and I'm going, how do these people live?
Uh-huh.
How do they exist?
Yeah.
Um,
So,
on
so Stuart, you're living a little bit inland at Alaurín the Great.
Yeah,
Um,
Alharin El Grande.
Alaurín el Grande, yeah. I'm
Alharin
still
is
looking for El
Arabic.
Pequeño. I'm still looking for Alaurín el Pequeño, the little Alaurín, but
Well,
you're
yeah,
you're in the
there's
Great.
Alharin de la Torre, which
So
is
that's all at
Alharin
the
is
tower.
Arabic for garden. So you've
Yeah,
got Alharin Grande, big, and then you got Alharin de la Torre, Alharin of the tower.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
And okay, we're going to sort of take you back now, um, and talk about the flying hypnotist. What was that the title that you used when you were working on the stage, doing stage hypnosis,
no,
Stuart? It
no,
wasn't.
no.
No.
This is a new development.
Ah,
I'm entering a new phase,
right. Okay. So
transitioning.
how did you get into the whole hypnotism field in the first place? What drew you into that?
I've I could spend all day talking about this, and I could easily do that because I'm very good at logging why I do things.
Yeah.
Um, the As regards stage hypnosis, comedy hypnosis, that in itself, I saw somebody on television once when I was about 12 and thought, that's odd. It's not magic. It's not
Uh-huh.
dancing. It's not this. And yet people are doing weird stuff.
Uh-huh.
Is it an act? You know, the same questions a lot of people still ask these days when they see me do the show. Like, they just cannot wrap their head around what is going on, but there's something going on. So that kind of formed a hook, you know, like I've got this hook with unanswered questions on.
Right.
And because I've always had a great love of books since I was tiny,
Mm.
I'd sit in the library. I know it sounds a bit sad, but I'd rather sit in the library and just read all about dogs and books and aeroplanes and see what's out there in the world
Uh-huh.
through books. This was the days before internet. Than go out and kick a football around. I hate football.
Oh, listen, I am so happy to hear you say that because I thought
I don't hate it, but I just don't. It doesn't
you
move.
don't get it. You don't get
I
it.
just
No,
don't get it.
no, because I have felt very alone in this one. That, you know, I do understand the sociology behind football, but it's like it just doesn't do it
I
for
dig the
me.
energy. You know, I dig the tribal energy behind a crowd. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I thrive on focusing that energy on the stage show. You know,
right.
that's what it's all about. You know, like, wow, look what he made him do.
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
for the right audience, they go absolutely nuts. So I dig the energy, but I just don't dig the running up and down, kicking a ball around thing. Don't get it.
No.
Anyway, so how did we get to there? I've lost.
Yeah, you was talking about your love of reading, rather than football.
Yeah. So we've got this uncompleted hook, and no one can tell me what it is,
Right,
and I can't find any books about it. You know, in the school library, we got Janet and John books and books on
E
maths and chemistry and stuff.
Enid Blyton. You must have read Enid Blyton as well.
Yeah, well, a bit, yeah, but there's nothing in there. Even in teenage years, there was nothing. There was nothing else in the world that,
Uh-huh.
apart from this one piece of information I had, and that made me very curious. So then, a few years later, I saw a guy called Tony Sands, who was a very well-known hypnotist in the northeast of England, and he did cruise
Right,
ships. Very smooth, very old school, and I saw him a couple of times at the working men's clubs. And 60 minutes, you could set your watch by him. He'd plug his microphone in, put his white jacket on. He looked a little bit like Kenny Rogers, with the big beard
right. Yeah, yeah.
and the slicked back hair. Well, not slicked back, like with a bouffant big
Yeah,
hair,
yeah, yeah.
like Bee Gees.
Yeah, a bit like mine.
Yeah, he's like sort of Bee Gees crossed with Kenny Rogers. Lovely guy, lovely tonality and energy. That's what I really got from him. Like he had just
Yeah,
this very soothing yet unleashed power behind his
right.
persona. And he could just drop people into trance and have them riding around on a chair thinking they were like a cowboy shooting Indians and sing, was it, I'm in the mood for love simply because you're near me. And five people would jump up and start running to the nearest person and wrapping their arms around them and
Ah,
strangers in the audience. And
yeah.
just bizarre.
So you said to yourself, "I want to do this." Was that what
Not so
happened,
much
John?
I want to do it, but I just thought, that's so weird.
Uh-huh.
What's going on?
Okay.
Because I'm very aware of what interests me, and I'm very
Yeah.
aware of what doesn't interest me.
Uh-huh.
I still had this remaining hook of what is that? Just kind of it drifted into the background over the years. But I've always had an interest in books. I've always had an interest in theatre. I don't like football, don't get it. But anything to do with like magic, theatre, music,
Right.
information, books, creativity, all that sort of stuff. So I was having some trouble with my lifestyle when I got to about 28. And I came across this book, which I've actually got a copy of over there. It's called A Gateway to Better Health by Dr. Brian Rowett,
Right.
who's a clinical hypnotherapist. But he wrote it in such a way that it was a very easy language for anyone to understand. There's no technical language in there whatsoever.
Right.
And there's part of that book, part of it helped me to understand that what was going on in my head with my, I'm in this bloody sales job and I don't like it. I like the money, but I don't like the job, but I don't know what else to do.
Right.
I was like mentally between a rock and a hard place. And this book helped me to kind of give me the ability to kind of, for want of a better word, to retreat from all of that into a place of peace.
Right.
like meditation. Some people might think of it as meditation, daydreaming, whatever. And the more I went, wow, this was really powerful, I was able to get myself in a very calm, focused, relaxed state and be
Mhm.
able to just put some distance between these kind of like knee-jerk, reflexive emotions that would, or behaviors that would come out. Um,
Right.
that created like spaciousness, or it created, even when I wasn't in this relaxed, hypnotic state that I was able to get to by following the guidance in this book. I realized that I could, once I knew how to do that, it gave me a little bit more, for want of a better word, control over my life. So if someone asked me something that I didn't want to do, but I felt obliged to do,
Right.
or even one of my own thoughts that says, well, you should do this because that's what people do, I'd just go, that's not happening.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to explore alternatives.
So you're 28, you read this book, and you say things have got to change.
It gave me the space, the mental space to manage my feelings, emotions, and everything
Mhm.
in a more eloquent way,
Yeah.
and to start. And this is a key point. Um, when people say, "What's the biggest turning points in your life?" That book. I mean, the book was just waiting for me to discover,
Sure.
answers to this unanswered hook that I talked about.
Sure.
There's something going on there that I don't understand, but
Yeah.
it looks fun, and there's some possibility that most people aren't aware of.
Right. But Stuart, this is a major change from what you were doing to, becoming, and these are your words, a comedy hypnotist in the entertainment world.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not even talking about a sort of slight shift from one thing to
Most
another.
people just said,
This
"You
is,
lost your mind."
yeah,
Because before that, I'd followed, because I was brought up in a world of family having a chemist shop, and my father was one of the top managers in an American insurance company, developing into the UK at the time. He rapidly went up through the ranks, hence the model estate that we lived on.
yeah,
He was
yeah,
a mover and shaker. Um, and that did come with some a price, to the family. That's another story. Um, but because I was brought up being very good with people. My mother, I was always hanging around my mother at the shop, and I'd see how she would relate to people. I was even got took out with my dad to across the river into the mining town where people had like rats running around, and
right,
really poor parts of the town paying their shilling for their life insurance that he used to go around
right,
and collect.
yes,
So I absorbed, as I said, I've through our family, I've from a very early age been taken from some of the biggest houses to the smallest houses, to the richest to the
uh-huh,
poorest, to the
yeah,
irritating people to the really nice people.
yeah.
And
But this is still a huge jump, going from that. I would say, good standard of living, but, in a fairly professional setting, to become a comedy hypnotist. I mean,
I was
that's a
earning a
major shift.
good for very little work. I was earning a lot of money
Right,
because I followed, kind of ended up sort of falling into the insurance and financial services.
right,
And a lot of people do this. A lot of people can relate that they sell their soul for rock and roll and wake up at 40 with a beer pot, too many Chinese meals, smoking too many cigarettes, children that's going, Dad, why aren't you running around and playing and stuff? Luckily, I'd held off on having children because I thought my life is messed up. I'm not going to expose any
mhm.
children that I have to me until I'm comfortable with me.
I think an awful lot of, parents now look back, not having done that, and then realized, when we were trying to raise our own children, how much we were still actually growing up ourselves and trying
Yeah.
to discover who we were, and at the same time trying to help to form in a meaningful way these little things that have been
Well,
brought
I was
into our
kind of
lives.
lucky that, I had two older brothers and an older sister. The two of them are 8 years older than me, and one of them was 5 years older than me. And, all of them, most of them had, their first children between 18 and 22
Right. Yeah.
because they had to.
Yeah, because it was expected. Yeah,
It was like,
absolutely.
whoops,
Yeah.
child on the way, get married, quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought, I don't want to play that game. I've said,
Yeah.
I know what I want. I know what I don't want. I've seen what's happened there. That's not happening.
Right. Stuart, but we're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, I really want to try to get right into some of these things about your work as a hypnotist, both on the stage side and also what you've turned us around to, which is looking at hypnotism as a form of therapy. So we'll take a
Mm.
short break now, and when we come back, I'm going to really sort of pin you down on some of these things. Okay?
Yeah, I know the story weaves.
Okay. Welcome back. I'm Bill Anderson. My guest today is Stuart Ashing, who is now the flying hypnotist. And I'm going to be talking with Stuart about the whole philosophy and practice of hypnotism, and the work that he's doing now. Stuart, welcome back.
Hi, nice to see you and hear you for those that are watching on video and listening on radio.
Stuart, hypnotism, it is a kind of fascinating phenomenon for a lot of people, probably because most of us don't really understand what it is all about. Could you give me in a very short description, what is hypnotism?
Well, one of it is not my dog barking because he's he's normally asleep on the settee behind me.
Yeah, okay.
Hypnotism. It's been, people think stage, when you say hypnotism, people reflexively, even as I did a few years ago, go, oh yeah, that's that swingy watches, goatee beard, starey eyes. I'm in control of your mind, and once you are there, you have no power, and you may never wake up, and
Yeah.
really bad things will happen.
Yes.
That's, if you asked, like that Bob Monkhouse program that was on English television a while ago, Blankety Blank or something. If you
Yes.
asked 1,000 people what they thought about hypnotism, 80% would probably say that. That's what they would think that it is.
Right.
The weird thing is, including myself, when I mentioned earlier about using hypnosis to help me to get into a better mind state so I could
Right.
distance myself from things, a lot of people spend their lives in a trance, which is basically habitual programming. And we'll touch on NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, in a bit.
Right.
But hypnosis aside, and this NLP aside, and meditation aside, and all of that, human beings, since the dawn of time, have followed pattern thinking.
Right.
Everyone's got their patterns. Some of the patterns were absorbed into their brain before they even knew they were being absorbed, like
Sure.
language.
Mm.
Like, we're brought up in a mining family, and mining families didn't do that. I'll translate for those of you that aren't Geordie, because that's the way people spoke in my village, a bit like Scottish. It's quite a hard accent. I'll say, because we are mining people, this is what we do, and you don't do that. So we're conditioned from birth to align with the family culture, the family line, the school line, the authority figure line.
Right.
And most people find it more comfortable not to question that, because those systems are designed to keep us safe.
Under control.
Well, some people say safe, some people say under control. We could get into a whole political debate about,
Absolutely.
there are terrorists out there. Don't go there because there's lots of terrorists there. They're just really angry people with guns and bombs, and they want to hurt us. So don't go there. Don't talk to them. Division, 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 division. So yeah, we can go down that whole route. So returning back to the world of hypnosis, and I was having had a 4-hour discussion with somebody yesterday about this stuff. This is how deep this stuff can go. I've lost my thread. Yeah, division hypnosis. So from a very early, yes, that was the thought I was having. From a very early age, because my parents were so busy trying not to be miners,
right,
and being something else and developing a new identity as up-and-coming movers and shakers in the insurance market, or hey, we own a business, we're a chemist shop people and stuff like that. I was left on my own.
mm-hmm.
I didn't always have someone around to remind me to do homework.
Right.
And my older brothers and sisters, because they're not of the same parents, of my father, I think that played into them being sent off to boarding school because my father was very protective about me. He didn't want older siblings beaten down on me, which they did sometimes. So they kind of got put out of the picture. Mm-hmm. I've been doing lots of therapy. I know we're bouncing around all over the place, but it's only this last matter of weeks, because I'm even now at 61, I'm still exploring and still looking at, how does all this thing work? How does this life work? And how can that apply to other people? Mm-hmm. So I realized at a very early age, parentally and sibling-wise, I was left to my own devices. Mm-hmm. So this ties into what we said earlier. I realized from a very early age that if I didn't want to comply with an authority figure, I would just stare at them. Right. Because I'd seen enough of life and enough of freedom of not being under parental control to know that they don't really have any control. Right.
And how does this fit into hypnotism?
Because I was so aware from a very early age that you could manipulate adults just by being passive aggressive.
Okay.
I had control. Mm-hmm. I could play the clown. I could make people laugh and things like that. I could manipulate them into laughter. I could manipulate them into thinking they had control. And then by the time they realize that I've not done the homework, then they realize they don't have the control. Then it's too late. Then it doesn't matter because, well, you've just got to go to school tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
So I was usually the one in control, not really in control because I didn't have a lot of guidance going on.
Right. Okay.
But how that developed later on in life is because I've got a hyper awareness of people, this wide awareness of ranges of people from a very early age through the parents' business. It gave me this, what I would now classify as, and some will just go, well, who the hell do you think it is? It's kind of given me this almost like superpower awareness of what is possible with people.
Right. Yeah.
And because I was quite isolated, I'm going to drop an F word in here because I'm getting to that point. At that age, I just thought, fuck them. They don't care about me. Why should I care about them?
Right.
So there was a lot of, circling from one group of friends to another. So how does that relate to hypnotism? When I found that book on hypnotism, it helped me to connect to me. What do I want? And how do I go, wow, this hypnotism thing's valuable. If it's valuable to me, it could be valuable to other people. So then I had something that other people found valuable. I was able to change their state quickly from stressed to relaxed, from depressed to happier, to smoking, to not smoking, to being fat, to thinner, to, I wasn't so much bothered about the therapy in the earlier days, but I did study it. And I made an active decision. Do I do therapy or do I do entertainment?
Right. So you started off with entertainment and then moved into therapy. Yeah. Is that the way things happen?
I was doing lots of hypnosis with other people, experimenting and things like that. And I just thought, sitting in a room listening to people's problems at 31, I was still in rock and roll.
Right.
rock and roll, couple of drinks, let's party, and do that with the audience.
Right.
So that was the energy that I delivered the show with. It was all loud and PA and smoke and lights and rah and all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I made a decision not to do more training for therapy at that point. Everything that I was absorbing was, how can I make people on stage do things faster, slower, start or stop? If I can
Right.
cause things to start, stop, speed up or slow down on command, that's all I was interested in. Anything to do with psychology, spirituality, sociology, anthropology. Um, so what happened was, all of a sudden, from not being really interested in anything and being just like another drunken salesman selling life insurance policies, I went from zero in 1991 to 1993. I'm bouncing around every university stage in the UK, tearing the place apart.
Right.
And loving it and getting very well paid for it, beyond anything beyond what I was earning with the insurance.
With a real job.
Yeah, my mom kept saying, "When are you going to get a real job, Stuart? You know,
Yeah.
a proper job." And I'm going, "Hang on a minute. I just toured the UK 3 times and earned probably 3 times whatever I was earning before for about a quarter of the hours. I get to travel around, see lots of wonderful people. What's not to like about that? And
Yeah.
for Christ's sake, just wake up."
Yeah.
Um,
Listen, Stuart, I'm conscious that we've got a lot to talk about still,
there's so much.
and the other thing, I'm going to come back to the therapy, but I want to pick up on NLP, neuro linguistic programming. This is something that we come across an awful lot, just in, I don't know, television series. People are talking about NLP. This is something that you have also decided to specialize in, isn't it?
Well, in 2005, when we landed here, I decided there wasn't enough happening with the shows. There was enough, but not, there wasn't room for
Right.
growth. So I trained as a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner.
Right.
And then in 2016, I did the master practitioner.
Right.
What that enables me to do is, basically, NLP is hypnosis without the eyes closed.
Right.
That's the simplest way I can explain it.
Yes.
So it's all of the power and connection at that deep level of mind that helps people to switch from, being anxious to less anxious to, whatever's triggering them into that pattern of behavior. When we talked about, we get into these automatic patterns of behavior, and
Right.
sometimes we don't even know how we got there, or maybe there was a specific event, like a car crash or a divorce or a loss of job or
Sure.
identity because they've lost the job, and all of that. So the type of people that I work with, more so with NLP, tend to be I work with anyone with it, but generally the ones that have the resources to work with me at the level that I'm at
Right.
are the ones that, basically, they're like a Ferrari engine, that they need a very almost surgical tweak or surgical strike in their behavioral patterns, because if they don't do that, they could lose their wife, their job, sometimes their liberty, because
Mhm.
their behavior patterns are causing divisions in their family, or they're causing problems at work.
Right.
In the most simplest form, and I'll bring it down to something that people can totally relate to. Aged 4, I had a phobia of bees. I got stung by a bee. I thought I was going to die. Didn't know what to do, panicked. My mother panicked, which I'd never seen her panic before. So that added more insult to injury on top of that. Normally she was quite cool about things. But in that instance, long story, she freaked out. I'd never seen her freak out. I was freaking out. She was freaking out. Run off to hospital because it's stung. It was this side, next to my eye. She thought I was going to lose my eye, plus she was freaking out. So all of that energy in NLP, or in it's called neuro-linguistic programming, whatever fires together wires together. So if you've got a high emotional charge, an event where you're freaking out, upset, confused, whatever, and that's attached to something. In my case, it was a bee. So every time I saw a bee, it instantly connected to the fear and the upset
Right.
and the thinking I'm going to die, aged 4. And that continued till I was 9 years of age.
Right.
Every time I saw a bee, without fail,
Yeah.
automatic program kicked in. I ran like a bloody ginger idiot as far and as fast as away, through doors,
Yeah.
walls, windows, whatever the hell it was. Get out of my way, I'm coming through.
So what is it that neurolinguistic programming is doing to help a person to break that connection?
Okay. So essentially, with a phobia, my record for getting rid of a phobia, even quite a nasty one, usually 0 to 10. If it's anywhere up to about an 8 out of 10, pretty bad, but not,
Right.
severe. My record for getting rid of a phobia, as long as there's nothing else in the way of that, like if their life's generally okay, it's just that
Sure.
that one thing's the issue. Then they're secure enough in themselves generally. I can break that connection that was formed between the initial events that caused the connection in their mind, which is
Uh-huh.
literally a physical, neurological connection,
Sure.
just by language, just by
Okay.
causing their mind to experience that event in a different way. So instead
Right.
of going, if you stretched out that 2 seconds it takes to see, for instance, see the bee or see the aeroplane or see the dentist or whatever it is that's given them the phobia, in those 1.5 to 2 seconds, the brain goes, what does this mean to me? So it rummages through the memory files, pulls out the file with the big scary bee on it or the big scary dentist with the pain attached to it or the fear attached to it.
Right.
That courses through their body, and then the whole thing spirals out.
Uh-huh.
So what I do with NLP, I'm able to interrupt that pattern and interrupt that flow from the stimulus of the thing that's causing them the problem, and I switch out the pattern. Once I get the brain to do that once, it weakens. Once I get the brain to do it twice, it weakens. Third time, fourth time, fifth time, sometimes 10 times. I run a particular pattern that smashes up that pattern.
Right. Okay.
It's literally breaking the neurological connection.
Yeah. And are you doing this work on a face-to-face basis, or are you doing, what a lot of people have done in a lot of therapies, actually doing online work with this?
It depends on the individual. Again, it's down to personal tastes, beliefs, resources. Are they financially able to? Some people have flown from America to work with me for 2 days.
Right. Yeah.
They just go, I know
I'll
you're the
come,
guy.
yeah.
I've
I'll
seen
come over.
I'm already booking flights. Have you got 2 days available? I'll go, yeah.
I
We've
can
all
s I can squeeze that in.
squeeze that in, yeah. And they pay a lot of money,
Yeah.
because I really know my stuff. And specifically, I know we say NLP, I use that as a simple example because it's very localized, it's very specific.
Sure.
It's got a very specific context. This equals that. B equals fear. Dentist equals fear. Flying airplanes equals fear, run away. And it feels like it's them. It's not them. It's just a pattern that got stuck.
Right. Yeah.
So how that relates to my exploration of hypnosis is over the last, since I was 27, 28, first contact with this book with hypnosis has always been about me exploring how do I deal with my stuff.
Right.
Initially applying it to entertainment because, who doesn't like standing up on stage and having 1,000 people just go, yes, that's fun.
Yeah, sure.
But as I get a little bit more, dare I say, mature, is that such a thing? As I get more mature, I think there's got to be more to life than just having people dance around on stage like Elvis Presley.
Sure. Yeah. And have you completely broken away then from the theatre style comedy hypnosis into a sort of world of therapeutics, or is that something you still have a foot in, Stuart?
Well, we developed from my personal therapy with people and things into a brand called Lux Therapy Clinic. That's grown over the last 4 or 5 years. So now I've got options. I don't have to do the show to support my lifestyle and my family.
Right. Okay.
Whereas before, because I can be quite obsessive and focused and absorb information for that, I realized that I could start moving that obsession for detail and solutions over into more the therapeutic side. So I've been working
Right.
with Olympic athletes and international business people, and people like me, just average people that are living average sort of lives. Uh,
Sure.
well, I say average. I'm not mega famous like some hypnotists I could mention. I'm not as
Yes,
rich
which we
as some
won't.
hypnotists can mention. I've got quite a meek lifestyle, believe it or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
I live within my means, and I don't have any Learjets or Ferraris yet. um, but during those 4 or 5 years, it's given me the mental space to realize that I can be of more value to people of means in this world. And I don't just mean
Right.
people of wealth, but people that have leverage, people that are movers and shakers, political figures, sports people, people that have influence over other people. Um, so the reason I kind of called the Flying Hypnotist, that's a fairly recent label. I'm not a fan of labels. I used to be called the Dreamweaver. Uh,
Right.
the website's still there, thedreamweaver.co.uk.
Uh-huh.
Um, I've got a very strong interest in flying, flying simulators and everything. So I've been going through another transitional phase after building Lux. My wife's continuing to build Lux with me. We're training therapists here. We've got about another 6 therapists trained, not just as therapists. I'm of the opinion that there are many therapists out here in the Costa del Sol, the UK, that take online training and call themselves coaches and therapists.
Yeah.
But they don't really have a lot of life experience, some of them, and they certainly don't know how to run a business.
Yeah. Stuart, our time is running out. I know it always goes in much more quickly than you think, but if people would like to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
StuartAshing.com.
StuartAshing.com. Okay, and I'll put that in the link.
And luxtherapyclinic.com.
Okay, Lux Therapy. And are these both connecting directly to you, or is one
Yeah,
more
they'll
to your
find
wife?
me on Lux, and stuartashing.com is kind of like my personal sort of
Okay.
placeholder where they can sort of find me there.
And you are available for consultations?
I'm willing to talk to people.
Yeah.
If they're a good fit, it's not always about the money with me.
No, no. I think that's very important that, you talk to people and sometimes you'll say, "Yep, I think I can help you," or other times you'll say, "Look, I don't think this is something
I
that I
spent
can."
4 hours with a guy in Bulgaria yesterday on Zoom,
Right,
free, because he was actually helping me with some coaching. He was actually
right,
coaching me.
right.
And I was also giving him some of my
Yeah,
experience in coaching as well. So it was like a friendly exchange. So yeah, it isn't always about the money. It's about how can we impact this world in
yeah.
a more pleasant place. And the stage shows are about to go live again, by the way.
Stuart, Um, I think that's a great note to finish on. I really appreciate you joining me today. I'm sure there's still lots of questions out there, but thank you for joining me and for sharing your experiences. We'll put the links up to your websites, and if people want to contact you, they can do that directly.
I'm happy to talk to anyone. Honestly, I'll talk to anyone if they've got a reasonable question. I'm more than happy to answer it in
Perfect.
person on Zoom or whatever.
Perfect. Stuart, thank you so much. Can I wish everyone who's listening into this to have a great weekend when it comes? And we'll be back next week with Expat Radio.